All right, we're going to go ahead and get going here tonight. We have a great presentation set up. I think I timed myself at about 35 minutes. So we might have a little time to talk at the end. So if you got some questions, definitely don't be afraid to ask them. Oh, we got somebody unmuted. Okay, so let's get this party started. My name is Eric Wright, and tonight we're doing part 4 of our native plant landscaping series, and we're going to talk about native plant propagation. I work for the Nature Institute in Godfrey, Illinois, and if you ever needed to contact me, or if you had some questions or some follow-up you want to give us about this webinar tonight, you can reach me at ewright@thenatureinstitute.org. All right, to start things off, what we're going to do is Ramona's going to put a quick poll up on the screen, and this is real easy. All you got to do is answer the questions that correspond to you. We just like to get a good idea of kind of who we have in the room. It helps us kind of gauge. Just answer the question as it corresponds to you, and we'll talk about how the numbers add up in the end. Not afraid to share this stuff. It's just real neat to kind of see where everybody's at. Do we have all beginners? We got a bunch of pros. Does everybody know about us or not? It's something we're always worried about. All right, we got some numbers adding up. Cool. Everybody looks at their screen and just answers the questions real quick. About half the people have answered. Awesome. Okay, we'll give a couple more seconds here. All right, so have you been to the Nature Institute? Looks like some of you have. That's cool. I know we got people from everywhere, but locally we're pretty well known, but we're still kind of a secret in some ways too. So don't be afraid to come out and visit us at any time. Native plants in your yard. Of course, we have a lot of people that already have native plants in their yard, because why else would you be doing a native plant webinar, right? So we do an annual native plant sale here at the Nature Institute, and it looks like 6 of you have actually been to our sale before. That's awesome. We're kind of taking it to the next level this year. We'll talk about that later. How did you find about the webinar? Facebook is still king, but a lot of people visit our website, and some people heard about it from others. All right, we're going to go ahead and close out the poll for now and get into our presentation. So let me click that one more time. So we are the Nature Institute. We are a not-for-profit organization located in Godfrey, Illinois. And our mission is to raise awareness through education, restoration, and preservation. We do all kinds of cool stuff, but kind of the highlight of our organization is our education wing. And basically every spring and fall, we have a series. We're basically booked up throughout the week with a series of field trips for school-age children. We also do special programming for both children and adults alike throughout the year. And over the summer, we do our Discovery Day Camp, where kids can come out for week-long sessions where they get to play outside in all age groups and kind of enjoy being outside and learn a little bit about nature here. So we are a privately owned not-for-profit organization, but we also own about 450 acres of habitat. And through those acres, we have over 8 miles of hiking trails. All of our trails are very well marked, and we got a lot of kind of cool things to see along the trail. We are located directly across from St. Louis, up on the bluffs, and you can actually look across the Mississippi River and see Missouri. You can see the Gateway Arch from our property, which is pretty neat. We also have a couple cool waterfalls people like to hike out to, a nice little creek kind of hike along. So if you ever want to just come visit us, if you're in the area, we are open basically all the way from April 1st through December. We close down for a couple months over the winter to kind of let everything rest. Like I said, we are a not-for-profit, and this programming tonight is free of charge, but don't be afraid to visit our website and click the donate button. Every little bit helps. It's been a tough year for everybody, and we really appreciate any support we can get. So if you guys are feeling generous tonight, you really enjoy this, don't be afraid to go to our website and help us out a little bit. So this is the 4th installment of our native plant landscaping series, and basically we developed this programming to kind of lead up to our wildflower market on May 8th, which is only 9 days away now. And we basically approach this where we're trying to, you know, start somebody that doesn't know anything about native plants and just give them the background they need to kind of feel confident when they come buy a plant at the wildflower market and put it in their yard and care for it and watch it and enjoy it too. So behind the scenes tonight, we have both Ramona and Ann. Ramona is our webinar administrator. Basically, if I screw something up, she will help me fix it. And then also, you know, she put up the poll and she's letting people in the room and doing all that little stuff that's really hard to do when you're talking the whole time. We also have Ann in the room today, and she is our greenhouse leader. So all the plants we're talking about growing, I basically facilitate that, and then Ann and our volunteers do all the work. So Ann's going to be hanging out in the chat tonight. So as we're going through this, if you have any questions that kind of come up, don't be afraid to kind of ask Ann in the chat. I'm probably not going to stop talking much for the first half hour here. So the chat's kind of there for you when you need it. If you're afraid you're going to forget something, if I breezed by something and it's super important, Ann or Ramona might stop me and say, hey, Eric, we're asking about this. And I will get to those questions as they arise. I do need to take a second to mention our sponsors. So let's go back to our flyer here. We are not for profit and we need all the help we can get. And we have some great people that help us cover the expenses of the greenhouse. And this year we have Terry and Nancy Dueling, just a great set of neighbors that really support us with everything we do. They helped us a little bit with the expenses. We also have a couple of great local businesses. Mississippi Mud Pottery is awesome. I would definitely check them out if you're ever in the Alton area. And Juniper Environmental is also really cool too. They kind of run parallel to us, but if you have like a big project where you're trying to do like some sort of let's say a restoration project or a stormwater project, and you want to do it in an environmentally friendly way, Juniper Environmental is a great person to ask. So I mentioned earlier that we've always done our native plant sale. Well, this year we are jumping to a wildflower market. And to us, what this means is we're adding on native plant vendors from our area. So basically we want more people that are doing the same thing that we're doing to come out and sell more plants. And what we're trying to do is kind of maximize the number of plants we can get in the community. We have more information about all these plant vendors on our website. So if you want more information about the sale and the individual vendors, please visit thenatureInstitute.org. I also wanted to bring this up. So we made a t-shirt for the wildflower market this year. The pre-sale for this is actually going to end at midnight tonight. So if you wanted to make sure that you're going to get a shirt, you need to order that online, and then you can actually pick it up at the wildflower market when you come buy some plants. We will have some limited shirts on supply at the wildflower market, but we don't really know how many we're going to sell. So we're not going to order too many, but hopefully everybody will wear our shirt with a lot of pride. It's done by a local artist, and we really appreciate the work he has done for us. All right, now let's actually talk about native plant propagation. So we're going to kind of go through a couple things that I think are important to really be a successful native plant propagator. We're going to go all the way from plant identification through seed collection, cleaning, and storage, pre-germination treatments and germination, and then talk a little bit about production. And as I said, as we go through this, if I kind of breeze by something and you want more information, don't be afraid to ask it in the chat, because Ann will be there for you to answer the questions. All right, so plant identification. I was not a plant guy to start with, but then I realized how important it was going to be for my career. So I went from being really interested in frogs and salamanders to really, I consider myself more of a plant guy. And I did that because I had my boots on the ground. I was out there hiking, working, looking at plants in people's yards, and making sure and just learning new plants as I was going through. Move that out of the way. While you're out there, you know, looking at all these cool plants, you need to be taking a lot of pictures. I know everybody's got a cell phone these days, and our cell phone cameras are fantastic. Don't be afraid to take a picture, even after you identify something. Maybe you want to review those pictures later, kind of help you solidify those identifications in your brain. So identification guides. The old school way of doing it is the old field guides, where you have your little book that you take out in the field. Sometimes it has minimal information, but they're great, easy access sources. We also have apps these days too. And this is the app that I primarily use. It's called Illinois Wildflowers. It's a free app. And basically it kind of walks you through identification steps, and it'll populate a list of possible species. It's kind of a big app, so if you don't have a great phone, it's not great for your phone, but it is fantastic in kind of finding that. And then with my pictures and my identification from the app, I'm able to kind of go back to my office and sit down and really figure out what plant I have out there in the wild. Another great resource is Facebook groups. Locally here in the St. Louis area, we have all kinds of Facebook groups that if you post a plant on there, somebody knows what that plant is. It's a great resource. Sometimes you'll get some guesses, but eventually, normally the correct answer is identified. Something I do, because I'm going to be collecting seed, is I actually mark the location of a lot of plants. You can do that with notes or whatever. I'm lucky enough, because I do this professionally, that I have an app for that. It's an ArcGIS collector app. It costs a little bit of money, so it's not for everybody. But if you see the little picture here, each one of those green dots is a plant that I identified and I marked it. On top of that, what I do is I take some flagging and I actually put the flagging around the base of the plant. So with that little dot on a map and that flagging, I can come back and find that plant. Even if it's small in stature and I got 7-foot prairie grass next to it, I can find that plant still. And speaking of seed collection, let's talk about that for a second. So all the plants grown here at the Nature Institute are from locally collected seed. Basically, I try not to get anything more than 50 miles away, and a lot of it is collected from within, say, 10 miles of the Nature Institute in Godfrey, Illinois. There are some different laws on seed collection. If it's private property, if you own that property, that seed is yours. You can do whatever you want. If it's on somebody else's property and you know them, all you gotta do is ask permission. You can also collect seed off right-of-ways, like alongside the roads and everything. If you see a butterfly milkweed that you absolutely love, you can basically track it through the year and just pull over on the shoulder road and grab it. If it's publicly owned lands, you need to check with if it's a state park, a conservation area, a national forest. Hold on, my internet says I'm being unstable. Okay. You need to check with whoever kind of runs that property to figure out if you're allowed to take seed from there or not. So here at the Nature Institute, we are at Illinois Nature Preserve, which means it's actually illegal to collect seed on our property. So make sure you know the rules before you grab seed from anywhere, but there's lots of opportunities to collect native seed out there. So a good rule for seed collection is, you're out there and you're watching these plants grow, and about 4 to 6 weeks after the plants bloom or finish blooming, then that seed is likely going to be mature and ready to be harvested. This is a general rule, but it's not necessarily 100% true. Some other things to look for is you want to kind of look for loss of green in the pods. If you kind of bust open one of the flowers or one of the seed heads and you see soft green seeds, those aren't ready. But if you see hard and plump seeds, those are ready to go. So you can go ahead and collect those. There's a couple different guides and internet resources to help you do this. So if you've already identified these plants, if you just type in, say, like wild bergamot seed, you can probably find a picture on the old Google. One of the things that we use here is this little seedling ID guide for native plants. It's great for identifying plants when they're still real small in stature. But the other cool thing about it is it has 2-scale pictures of different seeds from different species. So you can kind of flip through and see if the seed is ready and kind of make sure you're looking at the right seed. So after we have collected our seed, we got to do a little bit of cleaning and storage to make sure that our seed stays viable over time. So the first thing I do when I collect seed is I take that seed and I put it in a paper bag. I'll leave that paper bag open for about 2 weeks, normally inside, because I want that seed to kind of dry out. After that, what I can do is pull that seed out of that bag, and I want to remove the chaff. So, that's kind of the pods or all that stuff that kind of comes along. The rest of the flowering parts that aren't the seed, I can kind of get rid of that. There's several different methods you can use to do that, such as our little fire we had here. So what I did here is it was all common milkweed seed, which has those fine hairs that help it kind of fly through the air and disperse into other environments. But it's also kind of gets in the way when you're storing and planting native seed. So what we did is we piled up all these fluffy little milkweed seeds and just took a lighter to it, and poof, a second later, we ended up with a little pile of milkweed seed versus a big fluffy pile of milkweed seed. Another thing that I do from time to time, if I really want my seed to be clean, this little bag here was full of wild bergamot flower heads. And what I did is just kind of rough up all those flower heads within that freezer bag, and then kind of get all the seed kind of drop out of the flower. Well, because they're more dense than everything else, they actually fall to the bottom of the bag. And then I cut the corner off that bag and just kind of roll the bag around in my hands, and all that seed comes out onto my desk, and I can kind of have a nice clean seed using that little method. If I'm doing more general seed collection, like say I want to have a bunch of seed to throw on top of maybe an old ag field, or if I just burned a unit and I want to make sure that I'm kind of overseeding that unit, then I can use this hammer mill in this picture. Basically, this thing just pulverizes. It basically pulverizes everything you put in it, and it'll leave the seed intact, but it breaks up all those flower heads, all the pods, it removes a lot of the hairs, and it makes it easy to kind of store that seed. Because I could clean that seed out in a couple different ways. Excuse me. But what I normally do is just put all the seed with the chaff in a bucket, and then I'll throw all that stuff out into the prairie just to kind of meet my objectives. So after your seed is clean, or whatever you're gonna do, you want to store it in cool, dry conditions. So my seed starts out in a paper bag, but normally it ends up in a plastic bag, and I keep it inside over the winter until we use it the following spring. And this is a good time for me to talk about labeling. So you want to make sure that you label everything that you collect. It seems like a silly thing to talk about, but I'll tell you what, I collect probably 50 to 60 species every year, and I have been guilty of not labeling correctly. And then I think I'll remember it, but then I don't. So typically I try to put both the common and the scientific name on my bags. I also kind of put the date I collected it. I'll put, some more information, like was it prairie, was it woodland, and where I got the seed from, just because I want to make sure that I know where that seed is coming from. And I might use those seeds differently to kind of track the germination rate later. All right, so a lot of our native plants require some sort of pre-germination treatment, and it's going to be something that kind of helps that plant sprout when you start the germination process. A lot of our native prairie plants require cold, moist stratification. So this means it needs just, the right low temperature, somewhere between like 30 and 38 degrees, just a little bit of moisture. And what that's going to do is it kind of helps break down the outer seed coat of those plants and allows the embryo to kind of pop through when you start germination. The time that you need to cold, moist stratify a plant kind of depends on the species. So you might need to do a little research to figure out how long you need to do that. There's a couple different methods you can use to cold stratify your seed. You can do it in your fridge or your freezer. So in my little picture here, you can see that I have some swamp milkweed, and I marked that I started the stratification on January 6th, and I also wrote that it was going to be done on March 6th. So when I'm talking about labeling, I try to be try to do what I preach here. But and also sometimes we like alternate from the fridge to the freezer. That'll help speed up the process, because ultimately what you're trying to simulate is kind of a freeze thaw cycle. And what that does is the seed within the seed coat actually expands and contracts as you kind of raise that temperature and lower that temperature. And it kind of helps break down that hard outer seed coat and allows your plants to germinate the following spring. Here at the Nature Institute, we do a lot of our stratification actually outdoors. So first thing we'll do is we will put some potting soil mix in flats, and then we will just sprinkle the seed over the top of it. We label it again because we want to make sure that we don't lose any plants along the way. And we have a couple different things we use for stratification. So we built this little cold frame. It's kind of like a standing cold frame that was built out of an old fence with basically an old like glass door on top of it. And it's great to kind of keep our plants, keep our seeds nice and cold. And basically it's great to kind of just let the outside be the outside. So these plants are used to kind of freeze thaw out in the wild. So if you're leaving your seeds outside while they stratify, it's the same conditions that they're used to. So we've had a lot of success with that. We also have this other little cold frame. This one's built into the ground. It has a wire mesh screen. And both of these were able to kind of close up, keep the critters out of it. If mice get into your seed, they will move things around or eat up all your seed. So you do want to make sure you protect it from the critters. If you're going to keep your seed in the garage, you might want to make sure you have some mouse traps out there to keep the mice from eating and moving around your seed. Another method for pre-germination treatment is nicking. This is specific to legumes, so like our partridge peas, a lot of our indigos. Basically, they have a real hard outer seed coat. And what you do is you just take a knife and you kind of nick the edge of that plant or that seed, and you can actually see the seed coat kind of chip off, and you can see the soft, good stuff of that seed on the inside. It is a process. I mean, just using a knife when you're doing, say, 300 little seeds, it can be pretty tedious. There's a couple other methods, but if you're only doing, you know, a small amount, nicking is really easy to do by hand. There's also some alternative methods. I keep, you know, because what we do here in the Nature Institute with propagating plants, we talk to other people that propagate native plants too, and we share secrets between people. So like Scott Moss, he's at Lewis Clark Community College, and he's going to be at our wildflower market. He stratifies his seed outside, but all he does is he puts it in flats and then wraps it in burlap and then just sets it out there for the winter. So he's had great success with that, and it works for him. And I hope it can work for everybody if they try it. I also talked to Pat Mahome at he's at Pure Air Natives, and he says one of the tricks he uses on coneflowers is he'll actually soak his seed in water with a little bit of Dawn dish soap. And what that does is the Dawn serves as basically a little bit of surfactant, and it kind of breaks down that seed coat on the outside and allows your seeds to germinate later. We're probably going to experiment a little bit of that next year because everybody loves your purple coneflowers and your pale purple coneflowers. So the more we can provide, the better. There are a couple great resources to kind of look up some information about your pre-germination treatments. Prairie Moon Nursery has been around forever, and they have this great cultural guide that you can use as a guideline of how to treat your seed before you plant it. It also gives you a good reason to get your seed as early as possible. You can find that on the the Prairie Moon Nursery's website. There's also this thing called the Native Plant Propagation Database. And what that is, it's a website, and you can like put in the scientific name of different species, and you can see how other people have propagated these plants. There's some great notes. Some of the species have like 10 different people that have explained how they grew these individual plants. So don't be afraid to kind of poke around, do your research, and that's how you're going to have your most success for propagating your native plants. All right, so I want to introduce you guys to the greenhouse here at the Nature Institute. It's modest, but we do our best. So we have a 26-foot by 18-foot Gothic frame polycarbonate greenhouse. The Gothic frame is just the shape of the greenhouse. The polycarbonate is the material on the outside. You can also have like a glass greenhouse. Ours is basically a double layer of plastic, and it just provides a little bit more insulation, and it's a little more durable than, say, like a glass greenhouse. Built into our greenhouse is a 30-inch adjustable louver. It opens and closes on the thermostat. We also have a 24-inch exhaust fan, which is operating on a thermostat. And this helps us keep it cool inside the greenhouse because those greenhouses will heat up pretty quickly, especially on a day with full sun. For the cooler months, so this year we started our germination on February 23rd, and it was pretty cold outside still. So we upgraded a couple of years ago to this 80,000 BTU propane heater. And in the picture, it's the heater hanging up in the middle of the picture, middle upper of the picture. And down on the kind of bottom right-hand corner, that little thing hanging on the edge of the greenhouse, that was our previous heater. It actually only provided about 10% of the heat we needed to heat the entire greenhouse. So now we're fully heated. We can kind of maintain the temperature with our heater within our greenhouse. We also have these 14-inch adjustable speed fans hanging from the top of our greenhouse, and it helps us kind of to continue to circulate air within the greenhouse. We don't want that air to get stagnant. We want to kind of keep rotating around, and it really helps the plants breathe and grow. We were lucky enough last year to obtain some stainless steel rolling tables. They look super professional. Have helped us out in a lot of ways. They were donated by Bear. Thank you very much, Bear. And we are using them daily. I'll have a picture of those stainless steel pictures here in a minute. Within our greenhouse, we also have a built-in water spigot. And when you're watering your plants once, twice, 3, 4 times a day, it's great to have that water easily accessible from within the greenhouse. All right, back to germination here for a minute. So these are this is specific to kind of how things work for us here at the Nature Institute. Might be a little bit different depending on where you're at and what you're growing, but this is what works for us. So the first thing we do is we bring this stratified seed into the greenhouse from our cold frames, or if they're in a garage, or even if we have the stuff in the freezer, we'll spread that seed over the top of a flat filled with potting mix. The next thing we do is we place the flats on heating mats. So this is a picture of our stainless steel rolling table. And if you look in the middle of that table, you can see a little bit of blue. Those are our heating mats. And what they do is they help just provide a little bit of heat from underneath to kind of maintain that soil temperature and help encourage germination. A lot of species like kind of like a 60 to like 80 degree temperature for them to germinate. So these heating mats help us maintain that temperature from underneath while our big heater is doing the work from up top. Hey, there's our greenhouse heater again. I love that thing. It's amazing. That thing will heat up our greenhouse in about a 20-degree day. It'll heat it up in about 10 minutes, back up to 60, 65 degrees. So it's amazing how much it's improved our production. Everything is run on thermostats. The louvers and the exhaust fan, basically the louvers open up about 80 degrees that lets some air in, and then if it gets up to 85 degrees, that exhaust fan kicks on and that sucks all the air through. It keeps it nice and cool in our greenhouse. So on a hot day, even if say it's only 50 degrees outside, if we have full sunshine, that greenhouse will get up to 95, 100 degrees. So those louvers and exhaust fan do a little bit of work, and we don't have to do that work because they're all set on thermostats. We also added some grow lights this year, and they are relatively successful. We primarily use them during germination, and we use them to extend the photo period. So say in mid-February, the sun's coming up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then it's going down at 5:30 at night. Well, what we did is we set these grow lights to turn on at about 6 o'clock in the morning, and we let them run through 7:30 in the morning. And then in the evening, and we're just trying to give our plants just a little bit more time to grow, a little bit more light, because we want to produce the biggest, healthiest plants we can, because then when people buy them and put them in their yard, we know that those plants will be successful, and we're helping out our ecosystems locally in that way. So generally, our species that we grow here at the Nature Institute have sprouted in 1 to 14 days. We keep pretty good notes, kind of track the growth and development of the different species that we grow. Some of them, they took like 25 or 26 days to germinate. And then also we noticed that we don't always win. We have approximately 80% germination rate. Like if we did 100 species, only 80 of them would germinate. It could be a problem with the seed or different issues, but we do kind of plan for a little bit of failure. So we always try to grow more than we know we're going to have in the long run. So a couple pictures of germination here. So this is a tray full of Cytodes grama. It just looks like your normal grass popping up, but it germinates at a pretty high rate for us. I do encourage everybody to add a little bit of our native grasses to your landscaping or your different projects. It just kind of gives a more natural feel. A lot of our native grasses has so much character. They're just fantastic kind of having your landscaping. Like the Cytodes grama has very, very attractive seed heads, and they kind of drape over and they look really good. It's a nice little bunch of grass. So don't be afraid to buy a little bit of grass. Maybe just try 1 or 2 clumps. And then after that, you can decide if you want to add more later. If you've ever seen a milkweed germinate, this is a lot of fun. So this is a butterfly milkweed germinating. Basically, they kind of break through the seed coat and they shoot their root down into the ground. And the cotyledons rise up in the air, and as they open up, they'll actually flip off that seed coat. And it's a lot of fun to watch. Sorry, I got a text message. I need to turn that off. Our next one, sometimes when our seeds first germinate, they are tiny. You might have to kind of get really close to your tray to find them. These are American bellflowers, and these are probably a week old. So they've already been growing for quite a period of time. So they start off these tiny little plants, but they end up being pretty big and glorious after we take care of them for a while. So after you have germination, eventually you got to give those plants a little bit more room to grow. So we transplant from our flats into larger containers. Hey, did I talk about labeling yet? You notice that I had each one of our flats, our volunteers had each one of our flats labeled, and we kind of do that consistently across the board where we make sure everything is labeled so we don't lose some plants. Some stuff gets mixed up here or there, but we're able to kind of figure it out because we're really good at labeling. So when to transplant really depends on the root development. You want to make sure you have a nice, strong root system and kind of give those roots more room to grow. If you have a strong root system, you're going to end up with a larger, more well-developed above-ground biomass. A good general rule to kind of check your root system is after your plants have formed 2 to 3 sets of leaves. It's not tried and true, but normally once there's 2 to 3 sets of leaves, we'll dig one out of the flat, kind of see how the root system's looking. And if it's 2 to 3 inches long, we're going to give that guy a little bit more space by putting him in a larger container. So in my picture here, this is our flats. I actually took this picture yesterday. These plants have just been sitting in the flats for a long time now, since February. And they're definitely big enough to transplant, and they're probably going to be harder to transplant now because the root systems are kind of so well developed in those flats that it'll be hard to get them in a new spot. Luckily, we have all kinds of production besides the stuff in this plant. This year, we are trying cardboard candle crates. So these are cool in a lot of ways. Basically, we put this potting soil mix directly in there. We transplant directly into them because they're made of cardboard. They kind of share water between the different compartments of the different crates. They also will be biodegradable. So if you buy a plant in one of these crates, you can actually plant the entire thing inside the ground. And eventually the roots will kind of break through the bottom of that cardboard, especially after it's wet in the dirt. The other cool thing is you can actually pick up these entire flats and you can see, or these crates, and you can see the roots kind of poking through, and it helps you identify if you need to kind of move your plants to larger containers. We also still are using our plastic plant containers. In the picture on the top here, if you look at the right side of that table, the right side of the picture, you can see that we're still using the kind of typical 3.5-inch plastic pots. We also use some larger containers too. We move some up, and those plants get really big because they have more room to grow. And that's where we kind of transplant. When we notice kind of those roots coming out, we don't want our plants to become root bound. So they start getting too big too fast. We try to transfer them into a bigger container. So we do a second transplant and give them more room to grow. And then we have a bigger, healthier plant that's more likely to survive when somebody puts it in their yard. So after you get all your transplanting done, after that, you just got to kind of facilitate growth. So our temperature control is basically maintained by our louvers and our exhaust fan during the day. Maybe the heater has to click on if it's a cooler day with a cool, cloudy day. And overnight, we kind of keep it about 60 to 65 degrees in the greenhouse. We also allow it to drop a little bit cooler, especially nowadays, this time of year, because we want the plants to be a little bit tougher. So we expose them to more harsh conditions. We'll toughen them up and make them thrive in everybody's yard. We also try to maintain a certain amount of humidity in the greenhouse. So with watering once or twice, 3, 4, 5, 4 times a day, there's a lot of natural humidity already. But if we want to kind of supplement that, our greenhouse has a rock floor. So we'll just take the hose and just spray a bunch of water on the floor and let that, as that moisture from the floor evaporates up into the air, it actually maintains the humidity in the greenhouse. Plants like humidity, especially our native plants. We want to keep constant airflow in our greenhouse, so that's why we have those adjustable fans. Basically, it prevents your plants from getting leggy, it toughens up a little bit, helps them grow how they should grow, and it just keeps the air circulating so those plants can breathe. The grow lights, I already talked about those earlier. Fertilizer, we do, so in the past, we use Osmocote, which is a synthetic fertilizer. It's time release, and it's great. It definitely helps us produce plants. This year we've switched to it's a organic seaweed fertilizer, and once a week, maybe every other week, maybe twice every once in a while, we'll give them a little bit extra boost of nutrients, and it helps us produce these big old awesome plants that are definitely going to thrive once we get them in somebody's yard. So once we get into later spring and the temperature comes up a little bit and we have that sun, it can actually become way too hot in our greenhouse to where our exhaust fan and louvers can't even suck air out fast enough to keep it cool in there. So we do put a shade cloth over the top of our greenhouse. I think we've had it on there for 3 or 4 weeks now, and it just blocks a little bit of the sun and helps us kind of maintain a cool enough temperature in there, because that greenhouse will dry out in about 3 or 4 hours of really intense sun. And then watering, right now we're watering 4 to 5 times a day because it's been nice, sunny, well, except for yesterday. But if it's cloudy all day, we might only have to water once. It's kind of variable. You kind of check your plants. The trick that Ann taught me is if you actually pick up your different containers, you can feel if it needs water based on the weight. And that's a great trick that Ann has taught me to use. I just wanted to show off a couple pictures of our production. Our greenhouse is stuffed to the rim with plants right now. We have a lot of massive plants that we can't wait to get in people's yards. So you can see that this looks pretty full, but it doesn't do full justice to our too many plant situation. We have basically all the tables are full. We have the shelves on the tables, and if you look down on the floor, underneath each one of the tables is full of plants too. We rotate them a little bit to kind of help some species with this or that. And we have plants underneath this table too. We still have those plants in the flat, more shelving. And the forefront of this picture is our swamp milkweeds, which are approximately 2 feet tall right now. Those are definitely going to bloom this year, and everybody loves the pink flowers of the swamp milkweeds. They prefer a little bit wetter conditions, but if it's in your landscape and you kind of give them a little extra water, and they'll do just fine. Okay, so right now our online pre-sale is still open. Basically, we had such good production this year. I think we've grown over 1,600 plants that we're able to kind of offer some stuff ahead of time. We do have a pickup tomorrow. We had a pickup last Friday, and then the rest of the pre-sale pickup is going to be at the Wildflower Market on May 8th. These are just some of the species that we are able to provide out ahead of time for everybody. This is still open. If you want to check it out, it's on our website. You can also check our Facebook for it, but we can kind of make sure that you get the plants that you want, because there's a chance we're going to sell out of some species at the Wildflower Market. So in addition to the plants that I just listed above, in the last slide, we have all these other species that are also available. We did a lot of new stuff this year. We have some of the kind of standard iconic plants that we always try to do. We always try to do something new, because, you know, if people keep buying all our plants, they're going to get bored if we provide the same old, same old. Wild blue sage is going to be a real exciting one for me. We don't have a lot of those, but they're actually going to bloom here real soon in the greenhouse. And that's awesome, because like when you have those plants that bloom in the greenhouse, you'll put them in the ground, they'll finish their bloom cycle, but they actually a lot of time bloom again later in the year. So you get 2 blooms out of your first year. Everybody loves that, right? All right, that's all I really had to talk about tonight. We would appreciate the support by you guys coming out to our Wildflower Market, or if you know somebody that would be interested, we would appreciate you telling them about that. I haven't checked the chat recently, but I will check to see if we have any questions. Ramona, have you noticed anything that I should expand upon?
We had some questions about kind of when the plants were started this year. So kind of the earliest plants were in what, mid-February, and then kind of scattered out from there?
Yeah, February 23rd, I believe, was our start date. We were trying to start before that, but the weather did not cooperate. That was that 2-week period where we had basically under 20 degrees. So we just figured we'd be wasting propane by starting our plants that early. Basically early to mid-February is when we try to start our plants, and then they're ready for a market by basically this time of year. We probably could have had the Wildflower Market a little sooner. We might change it to, you know, this week, how we end up doing with everything. But kind of so I would say that we want plants to be market size, and some of the species will make it to where we feel comfortable with selling them, till we know they're going to thrive. They can be ready in about a 6-week period. Others will take, you know, 8, 10, 12 weeks. So starting in February kind of gives us just enough time to make sure we have some great plants for everybody to buy. Laura, yes, the milkweed was started from seed. We have really high germination rate on our milkweeds. Actually, we have whorled, we have swamp, and we have butterfly milkweed, and all 3 of those were real easy to germinate. However, we also tried to do tall green milkweed, which was not as successful. We also tried to do purple milkweed, which was not as successful. We want to do milkweeds. Everybody loves the milkweeds, but a lot of them germinate real easily. The other ones, it might be a seed source problem. We're always learning and figuring out new ways, and we just continue to be more successful. So hopefully next year we can provide even more varieties of milkweeds. Just kind of. And did you have anything that you would like to add? If you're willing to discuss anything with us.
No, you covered it pretty well. The seaweed that we're using this year, it can be bought through any of the seed production books, the books that are catalogs that you get in the mail. And it's just a small packet, a 1-ounce packet. It's very reasonable in price. It makes up a gallon of liquid. Doesn't have any odor to it at all, which is great. And you can put that on every 2 weeks. If we've got some kind of slow growth going on, I will give them an extra boost maybe once a week. And they just seem to love it. I know you were going to talk about the soil that we're using. We are using just a plain peat moss mix at this point with perlite in it. And the product is going to change next year to a product that we can get from our local composting companies. They come in great big, huge bags. And everything in that mix that we're going to get from them, we don't need to add any Osmocote. We don't need to add any perlite. We don't need to add anything except what fertilizer that we want to use. And Osmocote, they are all stating that the people who are growing natives are getting away from Osmocote, and they're getting away from the peat because the peat bogs are going to go down, and they're afraid we're going to lose all the peat bogs. So that's why they've come up with this new product. As far as I know, it won't be available retail at this point. They're trying to do it all commercially for the native growers right now.
And do you know what your what the seaweed fertilizer is called?
It is called Sea Magic. And I just got it out of one of the seed catalogs where they have all the excess, side stuff that they sell. And like I said, it's not very expensive at all compared to Osmocote and some of the other stuff. So I think that's it. And as far as the candle crates, those were donated to us from our local Bath and Body Works. So it's possible that if you have one that is local, you might want to, if you know anybody that's a native plant grower and they're looking for something like that, they can go in and possibly talk with the manager of the store and see if the manager would be willing to let them collect them. They're possibly doing something through corporate for that, but that hasn't been sealed up yet.
Thank you, Ann.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Ann does all the real work. I just kind of help her along the way. But her and the volunteers, they really know how to grow some plants. And thank you everybody for attending tonight. I'm gonna give everybody one last call on any questions. We're not afraid to share our secrets. We're really excited about the wildflower market coming up with all the vendors. We should have quite the crowd. If you want to buy the t-shirt, I put that slide back up. You can find more information about that on Facebook. It's going to close down tonight, but we can we'll have some shirts available at the actual wildflower market. Just make sure you get there early if you want to make sure you get the shirt that you want in the size. So check all that out. Does anybody else have any questions before we call it for the night?
So I'm seeing a question that no one else is seeing, wanting to know if we have a fertilizer that has some nitrogen and phosphorus in it that we use, because the Sea Magic is more of a potassium fertilizer.
Ann?
Right now we're using the Osmocote, but with this new product that we're going to get from the composting company, they have natural product that is in the mix that will take the place of Osmocote as far as the nitrogen. We won't have to do any stuff add any stuff to it that is not natural.
All right, thank you, Ann. Is there any more questions? I'm not seeing anything. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending our webinar tonight. We appreciate your support and your willingness to learn more about native plants. Hopefully we can see some of you at our wildflower market, or hopefully if you're not from our area, you have something similar in your area. Thank you, everybody. It's been an experience of learning how to do webinars this year, and I think it worked out okay, and I hope everybody got something out of it. So until we do this again, maybe in the future, thank you very much, everybody, and have a lovely night.